There has been a lot of talk lately about Rasmus Hojlund leaving Manchester United. Fabrizio Romano is here. One source of information has spoken about these stories, and yes, confirmed interest in Hojlund. United are bringing in a new striker, and that could potentially spell the end for Hojlund with clubs inquiring. Now, it'll all depend on the price clubs are willing to pay. But there is interest in Hojlund, and there's a possibility United could sell Hojlund. Talking of attack, we need additions in attack, and we know that striker is the number one priority. We're going to bring in a striker, but we're also looking to bring in a number 10. And Mbeumo is a player that's been linked because he can play striker and 10. He's Premier League proven. And in regards to Mbeumo, it would be a £50 million deal, which I actually think is a pretty fair price tag considering how Premier League proven he is. We've also got updates on Nmecha. Jason Wilcox, a huge fan of Nmecha, and we're going to talk about some of Jason Wilcox targets and players that we know or has been reported in the past that Jason Wilcox likes. We'll talk about Nmecha, what he could bring to United, and then of course Hugo Ekitike interest as well. Delap and Ekitike are two players that we've been linked to a lot recently in regards to transfers and potentially bringing in as a striker. So we know from Romano and this first story that United are going to bring in a striker. We've known from Whitwell, we've known from Ornstein, we know from everyone United are going to bring in a striker. But what could this mean for Rasmus Hojlund? Manchester United are planning to bring in a top striker this summer. Clubs are therefore inquiring about Hojlund, and the interest is there. Many clubs want to know how much he will cost. So Romano has said, look, United are going to bring in a striker. They're going to bring in a top striker, and that means Rasmus Hojlund won't be leading the line, so he's going to get less minutes. So United potentially could be open to selling Hojlund. There's interest there. Now, I think it depends on how much United want for him and how much clubs are willing to pay, because we know his book value is still £38 million, which means Manchester United need at least 40 million for Hojlund to avoid making a loss in regards to FFP. And I think Manchester United, with Hojlund's age and him being so raw and them putting down such an investment in Hojlund, and all the scouts and all the data thought that Hojlund could be a top striker in years to come. We know that United could be quite reluctant to sell Hojlund. I think 50 million, you sell Hojlund. I don't know if anyone's willing to pay 50 million for Hojlund. I think 40 million, United look at it. Anything under 40 million, United won't sell. But I think United might bring in a top striker and have Hojlund as the understudy. Manchester United might be open to keeping him, or they might say, you know what, new environment, get his confidence up, get him scoring goals, alone could be good. Now, he scored in this last game for Man United, and he scored for Denmark, so he scored in 2 games in a row, and maybe if he ends the season well, we either A, get 50 million bids and United let him go, or B, United are like, there's a player here, we'll keep him as a second striker. But there's many clubs in Italy interested in Hojlund, Napoli being one, and there's always been talk of this Napoli-Osimhen swap deal. But I do think this Napoli-Osimhen swap deal is a possibility, but I think there's so much media talk on it, and it's being pushed probably from Osimhen's agent because he wants to get Osimhen a big move in the summer. But in regards to Hojlund, I think as long as United got 40 million plus, they would maybe consider selling him. But he's not going to be the striker leading the line for Man United next season, but he could still be at Manchester United. I think it massively depends on the fee that pay, and what clubs are willing to pay. And even Hojlund himself, does Hojlund want to stay? Or does he want to go? Does he want to go on loan? I think it's too early to write off Hojlund, but we know he's not quite ready yet. Now, we need ready-made players. And I've said, I don't mind bringing in a few youngsters, but in attack, because we're not scoring goals, we need ready-made, proven goal scorers. When you look at the Premier League, the proven goal scorer in Mbeumo, 15 goals and 5 assists in 29 games. His output and statistics per 90 the last 3 seasons as well in the Premier League has been pretty good for a club like Brentford. And I think since Ivan Toney's left, he's really stepped up to show that he can get those goals for Brentford. Now, this has come from Ekram Kona and Court Offside, which aren't the best source of information, but we know from lots of sources that United do have an interest in Mbeumo. So do a lot of clubs because he is a top player. So this is what was said. Justin, Arsenal, Manchester United are among clubs eyeing up a potential summer transfer swoop for Bryan Mbeumo. However, the strongest interest may well be coming from Newcastle United. With that, they'd be willing to meet Brentford's 50 million asking price for the player. First question, is it Mbeumo or Mbeumo? Because I've always said Mbeumo, but then I've recently been hearing people say Mbeumo, so then I've been saying Mbeumo, but then someone told me off I said it's Mbeumo. So just a random question there. But one of my favourite Premier League players, honestly, baller, very good in tight spaces, can play in the middle, can play out wide, is good decision-making, good ball striking, good output. Now, Newcastle were linked with him in the summer, and Newcastle obviously looking at a right winger, and I think Newcastle favourites to land in Mbeumo. I know that Jurgen Klopp was a massive fan of him, and I think had Jurgen Klopp been at Liverpool, Liverpool be in for him much more. I think Liverpool will be in for Mbeumo because I've heard things behind the scenes that Mbeumo expects to potentially go to Liverpool next season, which is a weird one. But 50 million fee for Mbeumo, I'd do it. I think Premier League proven, you know what you get. I'd absolutely do it. And Mbeumo and Cunha are two players, you know what you get. They can play as a 10, they can play as a striker. They're Premier League proven, they're the right age. The two deals that I personally would absolutely do. But I have a feeling he's going to go to Newcastle, maybe Liverpool, but I think Newcastle's going to be all in for him. But if we're really interested in Mbeumo, maybe we can beat Newcastle to him, even though Newcastle are more likely to be in the Champions League than us next season. They've probably got a bit more pull. You know, Man United have this way of somehow getting players. So maybe we can. I think it's massively one to watch, but I know we're interested in him. And as I said, 21 goal contributions in 33 games, 21 goal contributions, 2,700 minutes, and his injury record recently has been pretty good. Now, here's another player to watch, although his injury record isn't as good. This was said by Patrick Berger, who's a very reliable source out in Germany, saying this. Manchester United are interested in Felix Nmecha, 24-year-old German. He was formerly at the Man City Academy and have him on their shortlist, as Bild reported confirmed. And it was reported a couple of days ago that we like Nmecha, and I did a video speaking about this in more detail a few days ago. He did mention this. Jason Wilcox, the technical director of Manchester United, knows him well from his time at the City Academy. And I do think a lot of players are at the City Academy and then have gone to like the Bundesliga or Ligue 1, etc., will probably likely be linked to United and Wilcox targets because he knows them well. But Wilcox isn't going to just bring in a player because they're at the City Academy and he knows them. He's going to bring in the right kind of player, and he'll look at Nmecha and say, well, he's got the right physical and technical qualities for the Premier League. He did say, however, there's been no contact yet. Borussia Dortmund do not want to sell Nmecha, but if they fail to qualify for a European competition, they may be forced to. His price tag is 50 million euros, which is 40 million pounds. For me, he's a 35 million pound player. And if you can get him for 35 million pounds, I would do it. But I think it will probably be 40 to get a deal done. It was said that United have a packed midfield with Maino, Casemiro, Gatti, and Bruno Fernandes. But if a player leaves, Nmecha could become a serious option. Casemiro is among those who could be on the move. Well, what we know is Eriksen's going to go. So a player will leave, and Nmecha, they want someone to come in that can play in the pivot, but potentially has the versatility to play as a 10. Because Eriksen's going and they expect Casemiro to leave. Romano has said that we want a centre-back, we want a player that can play in the pivot, we want a striker, we want a 10. There's other reports saying we'll look at goalkeeper and right wing back, but the four positions I've named United's four priorities. So let's talk about players that we know Jason Wilcox likes or have been reported in the past that Wilcox likes. Cunha's one. We obviously got reports about him in January. Jason Wilcox, since Dan Ashford's gone, will be doing most of the recruitment and making most of the big decisions in terms of recruitment. Cunha's one that United like, admire, will probably make a move for. Semenyo's another one we like because of his physical attributes. And Mbeumo, as mentioned earlier. Dean Huijsen, Luca Butt, and Branthwaite are the centre-backs we've been linked to and like. Nmecha and Wharton as midfielders, all players that sort of have been suggested that Jason Wilcox is a fan of these players. So these could be players to watch. In terms of Nmecha, these were my notes on a video on Nmecha the other day, and I said he's got that Joe Bellingham physicality where he can be physically dominant for his age. My biggest question is, will he be a 10 or a pivot player for United? I think he'd be more of a pivot player, but he's got that Pogba, Milinkovic, Savage type gene in him where, I don't know, he's almost an attacking midfielder in a midfield three, but he's not quite advanced enough to be a 10 in Amorim's system. But I don't know if him playing as a 6 in Amorim's system as a pivot player gets the best out of him. Now, what he is he's a strong ball carrier. He's happy to play deeper. He's got the physicality, but also he's technical on the ball. He's good in tight spaces. He can play those passes. His ball striking is good. His running is good as well, which is always good. But he's capable of creating chances, keeping the ball in tight spaces, resisting the press, has good technique. But what he has and what Man United need is he eats up ground. This is what Casemiro doesn't have. This is what Eriksen doesn't have. And this is why Amorim isn't the biggest fan of Casemiro and Eriksen, because they lack the intensity, they lack the ground coverage, they lack the athleticism. Why Nmecha's really liked is he's got the ability to eat up ground. And obviously Ruben Amorim wants players that can play at the right intensity and wants to improve the physical flooring of the Man United squad, because that is a big problem at the moment. So now Wright brought some technical players in, but we lacked physically with Eriksen, Casemiro, Antony. Continuing on, he just offers the blend of physical and technical qualities that we need. You look at Dorgu, he wasn't first choice. First choice was Kirkes and Nuno Mendes. They were the first two choices. They couldn't get Kirkes and Nuno Mendes. Dorgu was available, and profile-wise, he fitted what Amorim wanted. He got the technical attributes, the ball-carrying attributes, the physical attributes, yes, and that's why we went for Dorgu. Also with Nmecha being 24 years of age, he's a good sort of age. And then obviously the only problem is injuries. Again, missed a few games this season, 13 last season, missed a few games as well, hip problems. I do like Nmecha. I think he's a good player, but we don't want to Mason Mount 2.0. And that for me is like, unless you can get him for under 30 million, and I know it's a 35 million earlier, but I think if you can get him for 30 million, that's the way I look at it. Because while he's probably a 40 million player, 35 to 40 million pound player, I think because of the injuries, it's 30 million or now. Last but not least, Fabrizio Romano also confirmed some interest in Ekitike. It was said here, Hugo Ekitike is expected to leave Eintracht Frankfurt in the summer. Premier League clubs already started calling for the French striker ahead of the summer transfer window as well. So this is said by Romano that Manchester, there's a lot of Premier League clubs interested in Ekitike. We know Manchester United is one of them. Do we get him? I don't know. There's a lot of clubs interested in him. A lot of clubs that are better than Manchester United right now interested in him. But Manchester United wants a striker. That is the number one priority. We're looking at multiple strikers. I think when we get closer to the summer, May time, we'll have an indication of who the number one striker is on our list. It could be Delap, it could be Ekitike, it could be Jonathan David, who we spoke about yesterday. It could be Gyökeres, it could be Osenham. I think, we're looking at a load of strikers. We've got loads of strikers on our shortlist. Mateta's another one. I think when we get closer to the summer, we'll know which one we're going serious for. But I like Ekitike, but again, a lot of competition.